welcome. I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And if you would do me a favor, please subscribe to wherever you're listening. Please subscribe to wherever you're watching. It would definitely mean a lot to me. But this is where we'll start. So, if you guys have been following me, I definitely did. I predicted the brackets for both the men's side of the NCAA tournament and the women's side, and both of my brackets were bursted completely. Like I had Illinois winning the men's side, and hell, they lost. I had Maryland winning the women's, and they lost to Texas, I think. So this is just me giving an update of what's been going on, what's been happening. Right now, we're sitting at the Final Four. You have UConn going against Arizona. You have South Carolina going against Stanford. On the men's side, you have Gonzaga going against Michigan, and you have Houston going against Baylor. And I'm going to talk about the women's side first. First and foremost, one thing a coach has always said, right? One thing a coach has always said is do not let the game get close enough where the refs can dictate it. And I'm talking about what happened between Baylor and UConn. Baylor was down one. The young lady drove to the basket. UConn clearly fouled her. Hell, two players fouled her. But the refs didn't call it. And because of that, UConn marching on to meet Arizona in the Final Four. And again, man, we all talk about the final play, which it was an egregious miscall. I don't know how the hell you don't call it. But a lot of people aren't talking about before that UConn went on a 19-0 run. You know what I mean? Now that was spurred due to the fact that I think Baylor's best player had like a hamstring injury. But, you know, it is what it is. That's what happens in sports. And congratulations to UConn for making it to the Final Four. And congratulations to, Arizona for making it to the Final Four. Congratulations to South Carolina and congratulations to Stanford. Stanford and South Carolina and UConn pretty much has been – I'm not going to say they've been the best teams, but of course, I mean, they're all one seeds, and they've been the most consistent. One thing that I'm surprised about, and I'm kind of proud of, like happy about, is Arizona. You know, Aaron McDonald it's pretty much her and nothing. She is pretty much the Ja Morant. She's pretty much the Steph Curry when it was at Davidson. She has led Arizona to have one of the best offenses in the entire NCAA as far as March Madness. And it's really been her or nothing. She had, 33 last game. Now, of course, you have Sam Thomas. You have Trinity Baptiste. But it's really been Aaron McDonald or nothing. And while she's been good, it's kind of hard for me to sing. What I'm pretty much going to do is I'm going to give my update who I have in the Final Four, who I'm going to win. Or, of course, we have to find out who I have in the national championship and who I'm going to win, who I have winning. It's kind of hard for me to look at UConn versus Arizona and think UConn is not. It's hard for me not to see this matchup and think that it's pretty much it's lopsided. Because while you have Aaron McDonald and she's been good, and while you have the seed, you have the 1 seed against the 3. When you look at UConn, yeah, you have Paige Buckner, but she hasn't been quote unquote she was the best player last game. She had like 28 points, but she hasn't been really the best player for UConn this entire series. It's really been Kristen Williams. Kristen Williams has been incredible. Eva Westbrook has been good. It's like UConn has won in the team aspect. They've won because the team has been better. They've been better at controlling the rebounds. They've been better at controlling the paint. They've been better at shooting mid-range threes. Like, they've been better all around. And while Arizona has been good, it's really, if you really look at all the games, it's been Aaron McDonald, and that's about it. So I just, I have air. It's kind of hard for me to. It's kind of hard for me to see what I've been looking at from with UConn and not think that like I have to go with UConn over Arizona, especially seeing how to me UConn's biggest opponent, like biggest opposition outside of the national championship, was Baylor, in my opinion, and they won. Now, okay, we already talked about what happened at the end, and if they would have called it, of course UConn could have went down and scored again. Maybe I think there would have been about 4 to 5 seconds left, but Baylor would have had the lead, and if she would have hit both free throws, but it's kind of hard again for what I've seen out of Arizona this entire tournament. Now I will say this: Arizona has not always been. It's not been a one. Aaron McDonald has been great this entire year. But like I said, you have Sam Thomas, you have Trinity Baptiste, and they've been really good throughout the entire season. It's just they've been spotty from game to game, as in like Sam Thomas would be good, and then Trinity Baptiste would be good, but Sam wouldn't. And it's kind of like to go back and forth. The consistent score has been Aaron McDonald, and that's different from UConn because, like I said, you have Paige Buckner, who is one of the best freshmen if not the best freshman in the world, in the conference. I mean, in the NCAA. You got like I said, Kristen Williams has been good. Avina Westbrook has been good. It's like you don't know who you're gonna get, as far as you don't know someone's gonna be good. You just don't know who. And because of that, I have UConn beating Arizona and making it to the national championship. On South Carolina and Stanford side, this to me is the matchup right here. This to me is the matchup that we've been waiting for, as far as, yeah, you have UConn and that's on one side, but this is two number ones, and this is the only two number ones that could meet, because like I said, NC State lost on the other side, and they would have been UConn, but and both South Carolina and Stanford have some great players. Zia Cook, Victoria Saxton, Aaliyah Boston. It's just like that's on the South Carolina side, and on Stanford side you have Haley Jones, Kiara Williams. While Hannah Jump hasn't been great the whole year, she was really good last game. I think she had like 20 something points last game. To me, it's really who can control the pace of the game, because they both Stanford and South Carolina play sort of similar. You have South Carolina play. They like to run. They like to go up and down, but they also like to control the paint. They like to be methodical with their passes. They like to be methodical with how many times they pass, who they pass to, passing outside the post, how many times they shoot the ball. And Stanford does the same thing. But I have to go with Coach Don, and I'm going to go with South Carolina. I just think that Zia Cook, her ability to shoot the ball and control the pace of the game will definitely, it to me is better than Haley Jones. Now, I understand, Haley Jones is a little bigger, but I just think Zia Cook has been better throughout the entire tournament, and she could arguably be, one of the all first team tournament, in the tournament. So I have South Carolina and UConn making it to the national championship for the women's side. On the men's side, you have Gonzaga and Michigan, and then Houston and Baylor. Now, again, I had Gonzaga and Illinois in the national championship, and I kind of felt it felt tough. Like I felt like I was reaching, picking Illinois to win, and that's because of how good Gonzaga's been. Gonzaga can beat you in so many areas. And Gonzaga doesn't have a weakness. Now, when it's like when you look at the game, you can look at that game and you don't know who the potential number one overall pick could be, which is Jalen Suggs. But Drew Timme has been great. Of course, Corey Kessip he's their scorer. I forgot the point guard Ayahi. I forgot how to say his name, but he's been great. It's like Gonzaga can beat you in so many, and they can, if they're not scoring well, they're gonna clamp you up defensively. Drew Timmy can control the paint. There's also another 6'11", 7-footer that they have coming off the bench who's pretty good. It's like, but here's the thing. The way to beat, in my opinion, the way to beat Gonzaga is you have to control the paint. I don't know how, like, again, they have scores, but if you take out Drew Timmy and really dominate the paint, you have a chance of winning. You see all the games that they've been close, the opponents have either been close or beaten them in point scoring. That fares really well for Michigan, because when you have Hunter Dickerson, when you have Franz Wagner, both of them can control the paint. And I think I would pick Hunter Dickinson over Drew Timmy, but I wouldn't pick Michigan over Gonzaga. But that, to me, that's going to be, I think at this point in the tournament, this Michigan will be the best game that they played, because we see what Michigan did to UCLA. Like, it was a good game. And UCLA has been one of those teams where they just squeaked in, but hell, they beat some really good talent. But like I said, Hunter Dickinson and Eli Brooks have they've led the way with Isaiah Livers being out, or Livers, or however you say his name. But again, I just don't think that, I think it's going to be a really good game. But I look at what we see. Like I said, Gonzaga is a complete team. If Drew Timmy is not good, you still have Jalen Suggs, who is a potential top 5 pick in the draft. If he's not good, you still have Corey Kissip, who is a bona fide scorer and a leader, seeing as though I believe he's a senior. It's just from what I've seen, they have not had, I think the stat is they've beat their opponent by double digits 26 straight times, I believe. Like, that's tough to do. So it would be different if Isaiah Livers was in the game, because it resets their, it pretty much resets their rotation. Players don't have, players that usually don't get as many minutes and aren't really depended upon as much can go back to their roles. And while Hunter Dickinson, how a lot of people think that he is their best player, which he could be, and a lot of people think Eli Brooks could be their best scorer, which he could be, Isaiah Livers kind of does. He's a big forward that can control the ball and control the tempo of the game. So I think the game would be a lot better, of course, if Isaiah Livers was there. But because he's not, and because Gonzaga to me is a complete team, I have Gonzaga winning this game. And when you talk about Michigan and Baylor, I've been incredibly impressed by what I've seen from Michigan and Baylor. Houston and Baylor. I've been incredibly impressed from what I've seen from Houston. Dijon, Jeru, Quentin Grimes, Marcus Sazar. It's the problem with Houston is they have not put it. Going into March, they did not put they really were inconsistent of a complete game. Meaning their offense can go off, but their defense will struggle. Or their defense would be okay, but their offense would kind of weather out. Not to mention they dealt with injury bugs. So the fact that, Dejan's been great, Quentin Grimes been, like, they have looked like one of the best teams, which of course they're in the Final Four, but they've looked like one of the best teams in all of college basketball. And they can score. The best thing about them is they can score from every level. They can score in the paint. They can score in the mid-range, and they're good from three. They're not the greatest three-point shooters, but they can light it up from three. And the thing about it is, the reason why I think this is going to be a really good game is because both these teams, which is Houston and Baylor, are kind of like they kind of contrast each other. While Houston, their guard play outside of Quentin Grimes isn't the greatest, they do have some pretty good forwards and bigs, and their forwards and bigs are the bulk of their scoring, outside, of course, Quentin Grimes. When you look at Baylor, you have Makio Teague, you have Jared Butler, you have Davion Mitchell. Those are the three-headed monster I talked about when I did my rankings or predictions. The three-headed guard monster, like they have been incredible. And while I'm not saying the guards position for Houston is a problem, it's not their strongest suit. And however, this to me is a pick'em game. I've seen Houston at their best, and it's hard. And I've also seen Baylor at their best. And while their last games were good, it wasn't their best. And I'm going to go with Baylor. I'm going to go with Baylor because I think Baylor's been more consistent this entire year, this entire playoffs, March Madness, even though Houston has been incredible. But I think that this is going to be the best game of the weekend. I think on the women's side is going to be South Carolina and Stanford because I think the talent levels are a lot more even than UConn and Arizona. And on the men's side, I think Houston and Baylor are going to be the best. One, because it's a Texas showdown. Two, because I just think that both these teams are hot. Both these teams are rolling, and both these teams they're kind of contrary to each other. But you got the forwards for forwards for Houston, and you have the guards for Baylor. So I just think that clash is going to be cool and good to see. So I have, for the women's side, I have UConn going against South Carolina for the national championship, and I have Gonzaga going against Baylor. Now, of course, on Saturday, we'll talk about it again, but that's what I have. That's what I got. And this, all this college basketball talk has kind of got me thinking about something. So over the weekend, Mike Woodson and Shaka Smart were both introduced for the new school. Shaka Smart, who coached for Texas, now is the head coach of Marquette, and Mike Woodson is now the head coach of Indiana. Now, and these are Indiana is more of the storied program, but Marquette's been good for a minute, but it's gotten me to think. Sometimes you have to be aware of what you are. In fact, most of the time, you really have to be aware of just who you are, what you are, and what situation you're in. I say that to say, you see a lot of times, and this is in college basketball, this is most definitely in college football, and you see this a lot in the NBA. In fact, you see this a lot in almost every sport, that coaches are put on short leashes, even if the team, I don't know if it's fan bases, I don't know if it's ADs, I don't know what it is, but a lot of teams have unrealistic expectations for their team. And I'm kind of looking specifically at the Mike Woodson hire. Now, I'm not saying it's not good. I would love to see all my African-American brothers and sisters get jobs. Shouts out to Don Staley for South Carolina. Shouts out to, I'm sorry, I don't know, I forgot her name, but the coach for Georgia women's. Of course, Shaka Smart, Mike Woodson, the coach for Houston, who is an African-American coach that is coaching Houston right now in the Final Four. But one thing that I don't like, and one thing that I'm starting to see a lot more, especially in college, is teams are not realistic about who they are. Like I said, this goes back to Mike Woodson because the coach before him, I think he wasn't there for that long. And because he didn't have the success, I guess, that you were expecting, then he was sent out of there. But it's like, what do you expect from Indiana? You see, and that's why I think, of course, coaching NFL or coaching college and coaching professionals, they both come with their difficulties. But I think coaching college is tough because you got to recruit and you have to, go state to state and go to these kids' homes or go to these kids' games and just recruit. And then you have to figure out about money and figure out about, when I say money, scholarships and stuff like that. But and we always talk about the blue bloods, right? We always talk about Dukes. We always talk about North Carolinas. We always talk about Kansas. We always talk about Kentucky. Well, one of the reasons why we always talk about them is because they're always good and they usually get the recruits. Or, what's another team that gets a lot of recruits that isn't a blue blood? Oh, uh, what's that? Washington. Washington gets a lot of recruits, but they're not a blue blood. It's like, what do you expect if you're Indiana? What do you expect if you're Marquette and you don't have the recruiting like that? Now, it'll be different, and this could change. Shaka Smart can be an incredible recruiter because we saw what he took, a Texas team that was kind of, they've had a rich history, but before him, they were kind of like in flux, like what's happening next. And he brought them all the way, back to relevancy. And because a lot of people were forgetting that Texas has had some successful seasons. You had Kevin Durant on the team, you had LaMarcus Aldridge, you had PJ Tucker. Texas has some good players. It's just they haven't really been successful since then until Shaka Smart came. Indiana, I think that they're looking at Mike Woodson and seeing, he's coached some big name players. Like he's coached what's his name? Carmelo Anthony. And he's coached some big name NBA players. And I think that they're hoping, not to mention he played for Indiana. And Shaka Smart, he lived, I think, like an hour away from Marquette up in Wisconsin. I think that they're hoping that their connection to the game or to the school will bring on more people. But it's like, if the recruiting, that's like, what's more important? And this is to me huge. This is a huge and a different conversation for another day. But what's more important, the college coach or the college recruiter? Because if you can't bring kids on, you're going to coach what you got. And it's like when you look at the success or lack of success for an organization, is it really on the coach? Now, it could be the coaching staff and it could be the coach. But like when you look at I'm not going to say it's the coach's fault, but when you look at Oklahoma State this year, you had potentially the number one player and you lose in like the second round. Like that's not supposed to happen. Now, I'm not saying that is the coach. I'm just saying, the recruiter got the number one player there. It's just what's going on. You look at LSU. LSU usually has a top player, so it's just they're never like as successful in the tournament, and it's just like what's going on. Back to Washington. Washington has had some. You've had Isaiah Thomas, you've had Markelle Fultz, you've had DeJounte Murray. Yet and still, there's no tournament success to that. It's like you gotta look like what's going on. But it's just a conversation to be had. I hope the best, and I pray that Shaka Smart is incredible and does great things at Marquette. I pray Mike Woodson is the best coach that Indiana has ever had, and that's saying things. But it's just hard. It's like, and it also kind of piggybacks the conversation that we had between African American coaches. Now, this is, like I said, these are two different. You have Indiana. We know the rich history they have in college basketball. And Marquette, they've had some good players. They've had Jimmy Butler. They've had Crowder. They've had some really good players. But it's kind of like when you put an African American coach in a situation, and things start getting rocky, they're quicker to pull the plug on an African American coach than they are a Caucasian coach. Hell, you look at what's his name? Something Frost that coached Nebraska forever, and he ain't been good like for a minute. Yeah, and still, it took them a minute, and it's just. But then you look at a coach, you look at an African American coach, they'll get pulled after two years if they're not good. It's just it's again. I pray for nothing but nothing but the best for Shaka Smart, and nothing but the best for Mike Woodson when it comes to their new teams, which is Indiana and Marquette. So, and shouts out to both of them for getting hired in programs that they're kind of familiar with. When I say kind of, like I said, Shaka Smart lived down the street from Marquette, and Mike Woodson played for Indiana. So, shouts out to them. Let's move over to the NBA. So the biggest news was, of course, LaMarcus Aldridge. Let me say this. Last episode, we talked about there's pretty much seasons in the middle of seasons. let me clear that up. There are different seasons in one season of the NBA season. You have the beginning. Teams are just getting back. You got preseason. Teams are getting back. Those are the rusty, the first few months or first month or two. Then you have, you have the time right before All-Star break. Teams they're starting to get hot, but they're crawling to All-Star break. Then you have All-Star break, and that's where teams get to reload and get healthy. Then you have the free agency trade deadline. Not free agency, I'm sorry. You have the trade deadline, then you have the buyout market. And I said last episode that the two biggest buyout market options was LaMarcus Aldridge and Andre Drummond. Now, of course, there's still players out there that are really good, like DeMarcus Cousins. He's still out there, and he could definitely improve a team, maybe, who knows. But the biggest names were LaMarcus Aldridge and Andre Drummond. And I was shocked because the reports I was hearing was LaMarcus Aldridge, his pretty much number one destination was Miami. And I was kind of hearing that it was between the Lakers and the Knicks when it comes to Andre Drummond. But shocker, LaMarcus Aldridge picked Brooklyn, and of course Andre Drummond picked the Lakers. And of course, this sent everyone in an uproar about Brooklyn. You got KD, Kyrie, James Harden. You got Blake Griffin now. You got LaMarcus Aldridge and DeAndre Jordan. Joe Harris on the team. Landry Shaman's on the team. Like, they got a team. And of course, the Lakers now, LeBron, AD, Andre Drummond. You got Montrezl Harrell. You have Dennis Schroeder. You have a pretty good team. I'm not here to say LaMarcus Aldridge is trash for picking the Nets, or they have to build this team to beat LeBron. I'm not saying that. I'll say this first. I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, even though nobody really wants to say it and nobody wants to admit to it, it's kind of like the park. When you are at a park, now I understand about competition and everything, but you want to win, so you want the best people on the team. And of course, I think Steve Nash said it. It's like you're getting upset with Brooklyn for trying to be better. Like, it just, it is what it is. I think Brooklyn now should be the prohibitive favorite, seeing as though you have a bevy of talent on your team. And I do think that, I don't think people like Miami or the Bucks are really close, but they can win a game or two. But I just don't think, at least in the East, I don't think anyone's really close to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, on the Lakers side, when everyone's healthy, it's kind of tough. I mean, when you're looking, I think I think the West is definitely loaded and talented. I think Denver can make a run. Utah's still number one. We'll see what they can do. I just think the road is tougher for the Lakers than it is Brooklyn. However, I do still see both teams make it to the championship. But there was a conversation that was started with the announcement of LaMarcus Aldridge and Drummond that I wanted to speak on, and that was, is the buyout market or the buyout process, do they hurt small market teams? And this kind of was triggered by, well, of course, like I said, LaMarcus Aldridge and Andre Drummond. But when you look at small market teams and you look at teams that have maybe stars that they acquired from trade or draft, I'll say this, I do think that the buyout market does need some tinkering, because it's hard for me to see a San Antonio, and I know San Antonio is a horrible example, seeing as though how much success they've had, but it's hard for me seeing a San Antonio and seeing a Detroit or a Cleveland, and having a star or a good player, and then because they're disgruntled or ask for a trade, once someone asks for a trade, right, it pretty much it's almost destined that either, unless you're like James Harden or something, if you're not on the level of James Harden or Steph's or KD's or Bron's, and you ask for a trade and you don't find one by the trade deadline, more than likely you're getting bought out. Like, that's why a lot of people thought JJ Redick was getting bought out. It's like, when you're not happy and don't want to be there, you usually get bought out. And I do think the buyout market hurts small market teams, because usually when a player, and it's usually not a big star, it's usually a player that can be very beneficial to a team, i.e. LaMarcus Aldridge, Andre Drummond. Let's see. Once those players hit the buyout market, usually they go to big market teams, or they go to teams that are pretty much a piece away, a piece away from a championship. And I think this situation with Brooklyn is going to change. I think the NBA is going to, I don't think they need to, but I think the NBA is going to change the way they do things. And it's not, and let's look at Brooklyn for a second. And let's look at how Brooklyn was assembled outside of KD and Kyrie. The NBA is, and Jalen Rose said it best, the NBA is going to look at how Blake Griffin, and pretty much Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge, and James Harden went about getting on that team. James Harden and Blake Griffin pretty much did the same thing. They pretty much punted on their former teams. They pretty much sabotaged their former teams, as far as they did say they won out, but their former teams like, yo, you're signed to a contract. We're going to keep you. They said, oh, hell to the no. And, James Harden got overweight. Blake Griffin stopped dunking. They stopped giving effort. They turned the locker room into a toxic environment until they were traded or released. Same, and LaMarcus Aldridge didn't do the same thing, but he pretty much pouted his way out of San Antonio to get on the team. So I think that the NBA is going to look at how, because it doesn't, while Brooklyn is happy and while the players are happy, and this is more of a player-driven league between, the difference between Adam Silver and David Stern, I think the NBA is going to look at that and be like, well, I don't, they might change the way they do the whole buyout market. I don't think there needs to be change, but I think that the NBA is going to look at what happened with Brooklyn and what's happening with Brooklyn and be like, all right, because think about it. Brooklyn still has one roster spot, and they can get someone else from the buyout market. Hell, if they wanted to, Brooklyn can go out and get a DeMarcus Cousins. Like, they have played the system perfectly, and you can't get upset with it because that's what they're doing. So I just think, shouts out to LaMarcus Aldridge for picking Brooklyn. Shouts out to Andre Drummond for picking the Lakers. I do think that, I think LaMarcus, no, let me say this. I think Andre Drummond's addition to the Lakers is bigger because I think that he's going to play a bigger role and he fills a bigger need for the Lakers, seeing as though he now puts Anthony Davis back at his right position or his preferred position. He puts LeBron kind of back in his preferred position, and they go from there. I think LaMarcus Aldridge is another body that you can throw at a taller defender, even though he's not a defender, or a taller player. Of course, we know about his mid-range is incredible, and I do think he can still give you a solid 10, 15, 20 points. So we'll just see how it goes. We'll see how it goes from there. So, but shouts out to them. Shouts out to them. Shouts out to them. Moving forward. So, which in fact, hold on. Let's go back real quick. I've also heard a lot of people talking about how is it that you let LaMarcus Aldridge go on Brooklyn and you let all these players go on Brooklyn, but when Chris Paul was trying to make it to the Lakers, he was vetoed, or the trade was vetoed. That's a couple of reasons. One, it was a different GM of the league. Commissioner, there you go. It was a different commissioner of the league. Adam Silver is not David Stern. And don't get me wrong, rest in peace, David Stern. He is one of the biggest reasons why the league is now global and how the league has grown to where it has grown to. With some of the calculated moves that he was in charge of. But don't get it twisted. David Stern was more of a owner's, GM's commissioner than a player's commissioner. And because of that, the owners were like, hold up now, how the hell is it that the Lakers that had Kobe, that had Powell, that had all those players, how is it that they're able to have, at the time, the best point guard in the league, or arguably the best point guard in the league? Like, no, shut that down. The owners wanted him to shut that down, and that's why he vetoed it. And I mean, not to mention, it's like, especially in the difference between, when we talk about just the players, between LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin and Chris Paul. Chris Paul at the time was, like I said, arguably the best point guard in the game. And you're pairing him, not to mention you had Pau Gasol, you're about to get Dwight Howard. So it would have been Chris Paul, Kobe, Pau Gasol, Dwight Howard, and I don't remember, I think Ron Artest or something was this forward. Like you were about to have a squad. Like it's and don't get me wrong, I'm not for the veto, but I'm just telling you how it happened and why it happened. When you look, like I said, the players, like Chris Paul was better at the time Chris Paul has forever been better than LaMarcus Aldridge. But at the time, Chris Paul was a better player. Secondly, Adam Silver is more of a player's coach, which is why he allows a lot of things to happen that I'm pretty sure if David Stern was still the commissioner, the whole James Harden trade wouldn't have happened, because you have James Harden, KD, and Kyrie on the same team. Like that probably would have got vetoed. Blake Griffin might have got vetoed, and like none of that would have happened, because the owners would have complained and David Stern would have shut it down. Adam Silver, while the owners can complain, Adam Silver is more of a player's GM, and because of that, he's more like, all right, this is a player-driven league. We understand that people don't come night after night to watch the coach or to watch the team. They, as far as like the team as a whole, they come to watch a player or players. Like, there's a lot of people that say they're Lakers fans, and a lot of people that say they're LeBron's fan. There's a lot of people that say they're Golden State fans, then there's a lot of people that say they're Steph Curry fans. So they understand that this is a player-driven league. When they don't send a team, they send a player out to advertise and stuff like that. So that's the biggest reason why the LaMarcus Aldridge or James Harden or Blake Griffin move wasn't vetoed, but Chris Paul was, because David Stern is not Adam Silver. Not to mention, it's a new day. It's a different day in the NBA. It's a different day in the world in general. And players have more power. And like I said, and that's why I said the player-driven league, man. Players, their players are more powerful vocally, or socially with social media, and we understand that this is just a new day. Like this, that you can't expect a player, and this is what I think is different now than he's usually been. You can't expect a player, right, you can't expect a player to play 100% or to give their all to an organization when they feel controlled by the organization, when they feel like the organization, like they have no say so, or they. And this is the problem and the difference between the NBA and the NFL. A lot of players in the NBA feel like, okay, they have say so in the organization. That's because maybe the organization goes to them and says, yo, what move should we make, this, that, and the third. They understand that because they both are team sport, but the NBA, a player can affect winning more than one player in the NFL outside the quarterback. But even still, you can have a really good quarter. Hell, look at the Seahawks. You have Russell Wilson, but if you don't have running game, if you don't have offensive line, then you're pretty much strapped. This is a new day, so it's like, okay, the players aren't gonna play for an organization or don't want to play for an organization that they don't feel valued. And how do you think they will feel if James Harden has been requesting a trade out of here for God knows how long? You finally trade him, then you veto it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, especially in today's game, that's just not going to work. So that's why it wasn't vetoed. It's just a different game, man. It's a different world, and things are just different. So that's that. Now moving forward. So UFC happened on Saturday, and Frank Ngannou destroyed Stipe. It was pretty bad. It was bad. And here's the thing, man. Francis Ngannou, after was asked about John Bones Jones. They're both heavyweights, and of course, I don't know if they'll fight again, seeing as though that would be the second fight, and I'm sure Stipe would probably want a third fight, seeing as though he had a third fight with Daniel Cormier. But from what I saw, I don't. I'll say this. It was it was tough for me to watch and see. Let me say this, man. I think that I don't think that I know they're pretty much 1-1, so I'm sure there'll probably be a third. But I think that Francis Ngannou should fight John Bones Jones, and the reason why is because right now, if you really look at it, they're both top of their class as far as heavyweights. Now, controversy was a little sparked, and this is where I'm going to tie UFC into NBA, into NFL, into life. You want the best value for yourself. At the end of the day, especially when we talk about sports, you're only going to get as much as you negotiate and as much as you agree upon. And a lot of the narrative was coming out that John Bones Jones is scared to fight again or won't fight again because he's running or he's scared or this, that, and the third. But he's kind of blanketing it or covering up and saying that he wants more money. Here's the thing. I don't remember the last time John Bones Jones fought. I'm not going to hold you. I don't remember. But I do know that John Bones Jones, like Conor McGregor, is one of the faces of UFC. And a lot of people were with Conor McGregor when he's like, yo, I'm not fighting again until I get this X amount of money. And I don't know if he got it, but he got damn close to it. So when John Bones Jones is like, hold on now, if he feels like he's the best fighter in the world, which he arguably is, I want as much money as possible. And if you're not going to give me the money that I'm looking for, then what's the point of fighting? He's already won championship after championship. I think he's undefeated. It's like, what's the point of fighting? Like, no. So Hey man, it's kind of like with Deshaun Watson. Outside of the whole allegation thing, is like stand on what you're standing on. If you feel you're worth that much money and you feel like you should get more money, then hey, stand on that, bro. I'm with you. I'm with you. But I will say that I'm not trying to see Ngannou and Stippy again. Even though I I guess. I mean, I do. It is 1-1, and I do want to. Nobody wants to end on a 1-1, so I'm almost sure they're gonna have a three-peat. But, bruh, Nagano destroyed Cuz, and I would love to see him fight John Bones Jones. I don't know if it will happen. I don't know if they get the money to work. But if I know they're two different sports, pretty much, but if you were able to get Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury to fight, I think that we can get Francis Ngannou and John Bones Jones to fight. Now, again, I understand that's boxing and that's a whole nother world in UFC, but that's what I want to see. I want to see. But shouts out to Francis Ngannou for beating Steppy in the fight, and he knocked him out, man. It was pretty bad. Some of the memes that came out of that fight was was glorious, especially with the official and how people were killing the official because he let that joint go on a little longer than it should. But hey, man, shouts out to Francis Ngannou for winning. So, and lastly, before we go, so the NFL yesterday agreed on having a 17 game season. And of course, as we knew, almost every owner agreed yes. However, this is coming off of almost every player. I don't think there's been one player that's come out and said they're for it. Now, of course, there are players that are for this because there's players that make less money than other players, and they'll need that extra game check. Like, I understand that. Not everyone makes the same amount of money as Patrick Mahomes or Dak Prescott or, Russell Wilson. But pretty much majority of the league is not for it. And this really just shows this is another indication. I'm not saying that it's the only indication, but it's another indication that the league really cares more about money than the players. I mean, there's multiple occurrences that show this, but this is just yet another one. The players are, who have to put their body on the line for the game, by the way, is saying that they, this messes up adds another layer of impact on their body and this, that, and the third. But the owner's like, hey, it makes money. Not to mention, you kind of knew this was happening, seeing as how much money that the league is losing, not only last season with having partial to no fans, but COVID when they had to shut things down. You knew it was going to happen. And this is just yet another example that the league cares more about money and making the owners happy than the players. Now, the difference between NBA and the players, NFL, is the NBA, I think you'll see more players. You'll see a strike on the NBA before you see a strike with the NFL. I don't know. It's due to the fact that I don't know. They both have player unions, don't they? So, well, you have the NBA, the PA, but you'll see a NBA strike before you'll see an NFL strike because the players want to play, and I don't know. I guess the thought is you'll never beat the Shield, which is the NFL. So, hey man, we're getting another game, and again, this is just yet another example that the league cares more about money and cares more about pleasing the owners instead of they can chalk it up and say no, but we know the fans want this. Yeah, but it'll be cool getting another game, but at what expense? I'm not the one putting my body on the line. I'm not the one getting hit like a front-on car collision every time a back knocks me. That's not me. I would like to watch it, but I'm not going through it. So if a person that's going through it says, "Yeah, man, I ain't trying to do that, bro. Like this is tough. This is painful." That's something I would listen to. You know what I mean? But hey, it is what it is. Shouts out to, I guess, the NFL for having another game. 17 game, I think, starting next season. So shouts out to them. And there you have it, man. That has been this week's episode of the Unpopular or this is in this Wednesday's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. Again, please subscribe to wherever you're watching. Please subscribe to wherever you listen. If you're not watching on the YouTube, come over to the YouTube so you can get the full experience of the visuals. But I appreciate you guys. If you guys want any Unpopular Podcast merch, I got hoodies, sweaters, shirts, long sleeve, you name it. The link is in the description below. I appreciate you guys again. Love you guys. And until Saturday, much love.